Mary Magdalene, or Mary of Magdala, and sometimes the Magdalene, is a figure in Christianity. Mary Magdalene traveled with Jesus as one of his followers. She is said to have witnessed Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. Within the four Gospels she is named at least 12 times, more than most of the apostles. During the Middle Ages she developed a reputation in Western Christianity as being a repentant prostitute or loose woman. This is not supported by the canonical Gospels. The Gospel of Luke says 7 demons had gone out of her, LK 8-2, and the longer ending of Mark says Jesus had cast 7 demons out of her, MK 16-9. She is most prominent in the narrative of the crucifixion of Jesus, at which she was present. She was also present 2 days later, immediately following the Sabbath, when, according to all 4 canonical Gospels, Matthew chapter 28 verses 1-8, Mark chapter 16 verses 9-10, Luke chapter 24 verse 10, John chapter 20 verse 18, she was either alone or as a member of a group of women, the first to testify to the resurrection of Jesus. John chapter 20 and Mark chapter 16 verse 9 specifically name her as the first person to see Jesus after his resurrection. Mary Magdalene was present from the beginning of a movement that was going to transform the West. She was the apostle to the apostles, an honorific that the 3rd century theologian Hippolytus of Rome gave her in his commentary on the Song of Songs. Ideas that go beyond the gospel presentation of Mary Magdalene as a prominent representative of the women who followed Jesus have been put forward. Over the centuries, some have considered her as fulfilling a role similar to that of Simon Peter among the male disciples. Mary Magdalene is considered to be a saint by the Catholic, Orthodox, Anglican and Lutheran churches, with a feast day of July 22. Other Protestant churches honor her as a heroine of the faith. The Eastern Orthodox churches also commemorate her on the Sunday of the Myrrh-bearers, the Orthodox equivalent of one of the Western Three Marys traditions. Identity. Marys in the New Testament. Mary was a very common name in New Testament times, held by a number of women in the canonical Gospels. The reception history of Mary Magdalene has been greatly affected by different interpretations that biblical references actually refer to her, beyond those where she is identified by the toponym Magdalene. Historically, the Greek Orthodox Church Fathers, as a whole, distinguished among what they believed were 3 Marys: the Virgin Mary, Mother of Christ; Mary of Bethany, the sister of Martha and Lazarus, Luke chapter 10 verses 38-42, and John chapter 11, John chapter 12, Mary Magdalene. In addition, there were Mary, the mother of James, and Mary Salome. In the 4 Gospels, Mary Magdalene is nearly always distinguished from other women named Mary by adding the Magdalene to her name. This has been interpreted to mean the woman from Magdala, a town on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. Luke chapter 8 verse 2 says that she was actually called Magdalene. In Hebrew, Migdal means tower, fortress. In Aramaic, Magdala means tower, or elevated, great, magnificent. Talmudist passages speak of a Miriam, ha-Megadella Sear Nasha, Miriam, the platter of women's hair, which could be a reference to Mary Magdalene serving as a hairdresser. In the Gospel of John, Mary Magdalene is also referred to simply as Mary, at least twice. Gnostic writings use Mary, Mary Magdalene, or Magdalene. Mary Magdalene's name is mostly given as Mu Alpha Rho Iota Alpha, but in Matthew chapter 28 verse 1 as Mu Alpha Rho Iota Alpha Mu, both of which are regarded as Greek forms of Miriam, the Hebrew name for Moses' sister. The name had become very popular during Jesus' time due to its connections to the ruling Hasmonean and Herodian dynasties. New Testament sources. Primary sources about Mary Magdalene come from the 4 canonical Gospels and apocryphal texts that were left out from the Bible. These apocryphal sources are dated from the end of the 1st to the early 4th century, all written well after St. Mary's death. The canonical Gospels are dated from the second half of the 1st century. In addition, the Gregorian figure of the composite Magdalene developed an elaborate literary and artistic tradition in the Middle Ages. During Jesus' ministry, Luke chapter 8 verses 1-3. The 4 Gospels included in the New Testament have little to say about Mary Magdalene. With a single exception, in the Gospel of Luke, there is no mention of her in the Gospels until the crucifixion. After that, Jesus traveled about from one town and village to another. The 12 were with him, and also some women who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases. Mary, from whom 7 demons had come out, and many others. These women were helping to support them out of their own means. Luke chapter 8 verses 1-3, Luke chapter 8 verse 2, and Mark chapter 16 verse 9 say Jesus cleansed her of 7 demons. Some interpret this as meaning that he healed her from mental or physical illnesses. The statement in Mark is part of the longer ending of that Gospel, not found in the earliest manuscripts, and which may have been a 2nd century addition to the original text, possibly based on the Gospel of Luke. During the crucifixion, Matthew chapter 27 verse 56, Mark chapter 15 verse 40, John chapter 19 verse 25. It is at the time of the crucifixion and resurrection that Mary Magdalene comes to the fore in the Gospels. Uniquely among the followers of Jesus, she is specified by name as a witness to 3 key events: Jesus' crucifixion, his burial, and the discovery that his tomb was empty. Mark chapter 15 verse 40, Matthew chapter 27 verse 56 and John chapter 19 verse 25 mention Mary Magdalene as a witness to crucifixion, along with various other women. Luke does not name any witnesses, but mentions women who had followed him from Galilee, standing at a distance. LK 23:49. After the crucifixion, Matthew chapter 27 verse 61, Matthew chapter 28 verse 1, Mark chapter 16 verse 1 enlisting witnesses who saw where Jesus was buried by Joseph of Arimathea. Mark chapter 15 verse 47 and Matthew chapter 27 verse 61 both name only 2 people, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, who in Mark is the mother of James. Luke chapter 23 verse 55 describes the witnesses as the women who had come with Jesus from Galilee. John chapter 19 verses 39-42 mentions no other witness to Joseph's burial of Jesus except for Nicodemus. Mark chapter 16 verse 1 says, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. The connection with the earlier anointing of Jesus, and his remarks then, was one of the arguments used in favor of the composite Magdalene. After the resurrection, Matthew chapter 28 verse 1, Mark chapter 16 verse 9, Luke chapter 24, John chapter 20 verse 1 in Mark, Matthew, and John, Mary Magdalene is first witness to the resurrection. John chapter 20 verse 1 names Mary Magdalene in describing who discovered the tomb was empty. Mark chapter 16 verse 9 says she was accompanied by Salome and Mary the mother of James, while Matthew chapter 28 verse 1 omits Salome. Luke chapter 24 verse 10 says the group who reported to the disciples the finding of the empty tomb consisted of Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them. In Luke chapter 24, the resurrection is announced to the women at the tomb by 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning, who suddenly appeared next to them. The final chapter of Mark's Gospel contains 2 narratives relating to Mary Magdalene. Firstly, that along with Mary the mother of James and Salome, she was advised by a young man dressed in a white robe that Jesus had risen, and given instructions to tell Jesus' disciples, and Peter, that he was going before them into Galilee. But through fear they told no one. And secondly, in the longer ending, that Jesus appeared first to Mary Magdalene, who then related his appearance to those who had been with him, but they did not believe her. The occurrence of these two different accounts is one of the factors contributing to the theory that Mark chapter 16 verses 9 to 20 is a later addition to the Gospel. John chapter 20 verse 16 and Mark chapter 16 verse 9 both say that Jesus' first post-resurrection appearance was to Mary Magdalene, with no mention of others. In Matthew chapter 28 verse 9, Mary Magdalene is with the other women returning from the empty tomb when they all see the first appearance of Jesus. The first actual appearance by Jesus that Luke mentions is later that day, when Cleopas and an unnamed disciple walked with a fellow traveler who they later realized was Jesus. The longer ending of Mark describes the same appearance as happening after the private appearance to Mary Magdalene. According to Luke, the apostles, and according to the longer ending of Mark, those who had been with him, did not believe Mary's report of what she saw. Neither Mary Magdalene nor any of the other women are mentioned by name in Paul's catalogue of appearances at 1 Cor 15-5-8. Which he begins with, he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12. The Gospel of John, 11-1-45, 12-1-8, and the Gospel of Luke, 10:38-42, also mention Mary of Bethany, the sister of Lazarus, and Martha. Mary and Martha are among the most familiar sets of sisters in the Bible. Both Luke and John describe them as friends of Jesus. Luke's story, though only 4 verses long, has been a complex source of inspiration, interpretation, and debate for centuries. John's account, which says the sisters had a brother named Lazarus, spans 70 verses. Among the women who are specifically named in the canonical Gospels, Mary Magdalene's name is one of the most frequently found, appearing 12 times. Always, except for Luke chapter 8 verse 2, in connection with the death and resurrection of Jesus. In Matthew chapter 27 verse 56, the author names 3 women in sequence: Mary Magdalene, and Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's children. In the Gospel of Mark, the author lists a group of women 3 times, and each time Mary Magdalene's name appears first. In the Gospel of Luke, the author enumerates the women who reported the tomb visit. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them. In the Gospel of John, on the other hand, Mary Magdalene is placed after Mary of Clopar. According to Carla Ritchie, the place she, Mary Magdalene, occupied in the list cannot be considered fortuitous. Ritchie sees the significance of this is strengthened by a comparison with the lists of the 12 apostles, in which Peter occupies the first position, an indication of his importance. Mary Magdalene does not appear in any other book of the New Testament apart from the Gospels. While she may have been among the women mentioned in Acts chapter 1 verse 14, she is not mentioned in the epistles of Paul the Apostle or the other epistles.